The market is heating up. Houses are getting sold faster, and even through the era of rising interest rates, Lethbridge housing prices have held strong. So in short, you do not need to be afraid to sell. However, you still need to get your home ready to sell. So in this episode, we're going to go over 5 things you need to do to sell your home that you probably didn't know. Welcome back to another episode of YQL Real Talk, where we talk all things related to living in Lethbridge, as well as the Lethbridge real estate market. My name is Kurtis Hawkins, and today I have with me my beautiful wife, Chelsea, who's also my unlicensed assistant from the Real Estate One team. And today we're talking about listing your home, and specifically, like I said, 5 things that you need to do to sell your home that you probably didn't know. So in this video, we're going to kind of breeze over the things you probably have heard before, because maybe it's just me, but I think they're a little bit overdone, and it's usually more of the cosmetic things like decluttering, cleaning. If you're looking for any of those topics, Google them. There's a ton of resources out there already, but we will touch on them a little bit. So I don't know, over the past couple of weeks, I've seen a lot of the housing prices or houses in the price range of around 300 to 400 sell very quickly. And again, like we saw last year, we're starting to see multiple offers again. You're not going to be in a big bidding war. You're not going to be paying a ton over ask if you need to, but there is some competition out there and there's lots of buyers, which is contrary to what you might hear in the news, especially in big cities as well. So let's get these kind of cosmetic things out of the way. We'll talk about them briefly, but then we'll get into like the really interesting, the things that I think are interesting and things that you probably didn't know about. So in short, when you're getting your home ready to list, you do need to make it look show ready. It will make it sell faster and for a higher price. So the biggest thing you can do right off the bat is declutter. Everybody knows if you've been in your house for a long time, you tend to collect a lot of things and a lot of stuff. I don't know how it happens. Me and Chelsea here try to live pretty minimalist, but stuff just accumulates. I don't know where it comes from.
You forget about your bathroom vanity for a year and then you go to clean it out and you're like, I didn't even know this lipstick was back here.
Yeah, and even talk about the fridge.
No kidding.
Things growing in the back of it all the time. So declutter is a big one. It just helps you clean up your space and helps people visualize their own stuff in it rather than your own. Further to decluttering is also cleaning your home. Get it show ready, make it look like a showroom. If you don't want to clean it, spend $200 and get a cleaner in there. Again, it'll make your house show better. It'll help you sell faster and get you more money for it. There's some other things that I like to always add in there that I think are overlooked when it comes to these cosmetic things. And this is light bulbs. So a lot of people don't realize this. I'm more picky with it because I'm always doing things with the video camera. So I always want things to match. But it doesn't matter what kind of lights you like, whether they're warm lights or whether they're white lights. They're measured on Kelvins. We're going to get really nerdy here. I'm not going to get into it, but there's white lights you'll see when you go to Home Depot and they have the section of lights. You'll see orange lights and you'll see white lights that are almost blue sometimes. It doesn't matter which ones you use, just make sure they're consistent throughout the house because it's kind of weird and throws everything off when there's like an orange light here and a white light here and a different colored one that's kind of in between on this side. So just make them all look the same. It does help out.
I think the cleaning and like small maintenance, things like that, like having all of your light bulbs gives the buyer also a good representation that your house is well taken care of. Yep.
Finally, I would say a big one is make your home smell nice. You don't need to make it overpowering with a air freshener or anything like that. But if you want to light a candle beforehand, go ahead. That always helps. Biggest thing you can do, I think, especially in newer homes, because they're making them so efficient that it can get kind of stuffy in your house, is just in the newer homes, especially, they have that ventilation fan. So it turns on your furnace, brings all new air in, and then sucks out all the stale air through your bathroom fans. Open the windows, do all those sorts of things, and just make it smell nice again. And of course, I don't know if you notice this, but when you go to other people's houses smell different than your own. You never smell your own house.
No.
And you don't notice it. So it's just something to keep in mind.
It's not necessarily even a bad smell, but the more neutral you can probably be, the better.
Yep, for sure.
When we bought this house, they did a fantastic job of decluttering things to the point where now that we've been in this house for a little while, we've noticed some small storage issues, but because they had taken so much of their stuff out, you breezed right over the fact that there was
We're going to sell this house one day. Don't tell people that.
This
house is perfect.
This house is perfect. There's nothing wrong with it.
Just kidding.
But I think it's just a fantastic example.
Yep.
The other thing that they did is that they made this house pet-free. So we know now that they had a dog in this place. not that would, I don't think that would have changed our minds, but maybe there are people out there that are sensitive to pets. But we had, based on walking through the house, there was no indication that there was a dog here until the snow melted and we saw our grass.
And sometimes there's not much you can do to make your house look pet free if there's a cat in it during a showing.
Yes.
But other than the cat being here, there should be like no other
Evidence
of a cat, like no scratch marks on your furniture or whatever. Try to hide all that kind of stuff too. Obviously, if there's scratch marks on the carpet, then you kind of have to disclose that type of stuff. But it always does look better when there's not a million cat things out either, because if you're not a cat person, you're coming into a house full of cat stuff, then it might be off-putting to those people, not to me.
I was going to say, not to me. You're selling me.
Finally, I think the last thing, I don't know if it's the most important thing, I didn't save it for last, it's just the last thing on the list, is curb appeal. So when you pull up to the house, you don't have to go and repaint the front of your house unless you think you need to. But the biggest thing you can do is just mow the lawn. If there's snow outside, shovel the snow, do all those things that when they pull up to the house, go, oh, wow, this could be the house. It looks great from the outside. Like you want that, you know what it's like when you're going to look at your house or your future house. When you pull up, you should get that feeling right away. And the little things you can do is turn the outside light on, sweep your porch, just make everything clean, clean and tidy. Do the lawn work, all that kind of stuff. Enough of that. Let's get into the meat and potatoes, the stuff that you didn't know. First thing first. Oh, actually, before I move on, if you think that we should go into more in depth about the cosmetic things, then please leave a comment and we'll do a follow-up video. I just think there's a lot of information out there already. That's why we kind of breezing over this one. Let's get into it. So the first thing is the RPR / letter of compliance. So first, what is an RPR? So an RPR is basically, it's called a real property report, and it's basically a top-down kind of drawing of your land that you own. So it'll show your house, it'll show your sheds, it'll show your deck. And from there, it basically tells the owner, the new owner, what's on this property and where it is. So the reason why these are important is so that you can see if everything that is on the RPR is what's here on the land. And if there isn't anything, then chances are it might not have a permit, or it may have a permit, it's just not on the RPR, or if there's any encroachments from the neighbor's land or something like that. So it'll tell you all this sort of stuff on the RPR and as well as the title and / letter of compliance. So the letter of compliance the RPR shows you what's on here. The letter of compliance is from the city of Lethbridge, and that'll tell you if there's things that are or are not compliant. So why it's important to get one is because in the listing contract that you sign, it says that you need a new RPR for every new listing, that you're going to provide one of those to the buyers. So if you don't have one, you're not fulfilling the contract. Doesn't matter what, I've heard people say, I've gone into listing presentations. Oh, well, the last guy we interviewed said we didn't need one. Well, then he probably doesn't know the contract because it's literally in there. Again, it's important to have one so that the new buyer knows what they're buying and what complies and what doesn't comply.
So let's say we bought this house 10 years ago. In the shuffle, we seem to have lost our paperwork. How do we go about getting an RPR? What does it cost?
If you happen to be listing with Kurtis Hawkins, what we can do is order it, like through the brokerage. We can order an RPR, and you have to get a RPR company. What are they called? I can't even remember.
Isn't like an engineer or a drafter or?
I know the company name. I can't think of what they're called. You get a company to come in, and they come and measure your house and do the top-down photo thing of like the map of your house, and then what they do is send it off to the city, and the city looks it over and says, yes, all the setbacks are there, it complies or it doesn't comply. And it'll just, if it doesn't comply, it's not that it needs to be moved, then the city comes and tells you it needs to be moved, but it just tells you what is compliant and what's non-compliant.
So why don't you give a good example of something that didn't comply, that doesn't comply, but like shouldn't make or break a house?
A shed. Every flipping time. So lots of times you'll buy a house, let's say it's a new build, and you put a shed in the backyard. The setback requirement from the city is it has to be 2 feet away, 2 feet away. I believe it's 2 full feet away from the fence, like from the back alley, and 2 feet away from your neighbor's fence. Lots of people put them up in the corner of the fence because they want to maximize their yard space.
Yeah, it's convenient.
It makes perfect sense. However, they do not have a permit to put the shed there, and the shed is now encroaching on the backyard or your neighbor's yard. Now, if nobody goes and complains about the shed, it's fine. Have you ever had a neighbor complain about your shed unless it's like dangling over your fence?
Yeah, no.
No, it's fine. However, it's not compliant with the city. So what you can do is if it is too close, you can either move it so that it complies, or you can get a waiver from the city saying that, yes, it's too close to the fence, but everyone's cool with it. It can stay there.
Or if you're the buyer and you're looking at this real property report and it says it's not compliant,
you can have the shed moved. You can accept it as is and be cool with it and be like, you know what? The shed's 2 inches too close. It's fine. We'll be fine. If somebody complains, we'll move it 2 inches. Right?
That's what I was getting at.
But what people get their nose or their, I don't know, panties in a bunch about. Am I allowed to say that?
I don't know.
Their underwear, their undergarments in a bunch about is if they're not told about this ahead of time, then they find out after the fact that it's non-compliant. If they just knew ahead of time, usually everybody's fine. But
I get it. When you're going to the lawyers and it's the last step and you've already said yes to all this stuff and then the lawyer comes and tells you that the city says that this isn't right, I get how that could freak you out for sure.
A good lawyer will be like, don't worry about it. It's a shed. But it goes for anything. So it might not be a shed. It might be a deck. What if you have this like $30,000 deck? Or what if the shed's really nice? I don't know. What if it's a $30,000 deck and now it's encroaching and now your neighbor complains and you got to have your deck removed?
Yeah.
That's basically the point of having an RPR. So they do cost, I think, roughly around $750 to get all that done. So it's not cheap, but it is necessary.
I know, we could probably literally do a whole podcast episode on RPRs.
Yeah, but that's enough. They're so boring. Nobody cares that much about RPRs. All you need to know is that you need to get one so that it shows what's on your property and where it is and if it's compliant or not compliant.
Okay.
And if it's not compliant, we can do things to fix it if the buyers so choose or whatever. But again, you just need to disclose all that kind of stuff ahead of time to the buyers. Number 2 is permits.
Only slightly less boring than an RPR.
Yeah, but still important. And again, probably something you didn't know. So the RPR and compliance is good for everything outside of the house, but it does not tell you anything about inside of the house. So let's say you moved into your house and you finished the basement. Did you get the permits pulled for that basement? Yes or no? If not, it might be a good idea to get those permits pulled. You don't always have to. You can disclose that, hey, we didn't get the permits pulled, but you're going to need to accept it as is because we're not doing anything about it. But it's going to be a lot easier and it's going to put more people at ease. And as a buyer, if you're buying a house, it's also a very good idea to have those permits done because basically when you do a renovation, when you get the permits done, that means that you're meeting all of the code, the building code to what it is at that time, not in the future when you sell it. So let's say you don't have the permits when you buy the house. When you go out and sell the house, the requirements could change pretty significantly. So if you're doing the permits then, you have to get the permits done to the code of whatever it is at that current time, not from when the house was built or when you did the renovations. So let's say right now there's a new one that you have to do smoke alarms in every room. When you would have done those renovations 5 years ago, maybe you didn't have to do that and it would be grandfathered in because you did it to the code at that time if you had those permits. If you didn't have the permits, then you'd have to upgrade that and fish wires in and put wire in your smoke alarms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for when you actually get those done. So
what are things that require permits?
So typically it's a building permit, an electrical permit, and a plumbing permit are things that you need to get done inside your house. So those are the 3 big ones that you're going to have to jump through if you don't have those permits done. If you have them done, then it's very easy to do. You don't have to get them done. You can say that I don't have the permits done and whoever buys it has to accept it as is, but you're going to narrow out some of the potential buyers because you don't have them done because they're like, well, did they do it right? Like how much are we off code? Who did them? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So it just eliminates a lot of the questions that buyers might have. I think that covers everything for permits.
I think
Any
so.
other questions?
Yeah. Building permits means if you're putting walls up and creating new rooms.
Yep.
Anything cosmetic is not covered. I guess cosmetic is a little bit vague of a term too. So
Well, that'd be a basement renovation, not if you're adding a basement. So if you're renovating a bathroom, you're not moving any plumbing or anything. You're adding plumbing fixtures like a faucet. You don't need a permit for that. If you're putting in new plugs or putting in new wires, you're going to need an electrical permit for that. If you're adding a bathroom, let's say you have a basement done, but you're just adding a bathroom, you're going to have to get a plumbing permit for that. It's fairly easy to get them done at the time of when you're building it, especially if you're hiring a contractor. Just make sure that they're getting the permits and they'll basically do it all for you.
Yeah.
So
let's say you don't know. You bought this house 20 years ago. You are unsure if your basement has permits. How do you go about finding out if you have permits? Does it cost anything?
It doesn't cost anything now. Bum, bum, bum. So recently I was dealing with a seller who had a basement that had all the renovations done when he bought it. When he bought the house at the time, he assumed that there was permits. There was no permits. So he did a bunch of cosmetic things to upgrade the basement. The new buyers came in and said, hey, are the permits done? And both of me and the seller both said, as far as we know, the permits are there. Like, we bought the house finished. Turns out
It wasn't.
it wasn't. So I had to call the city, and you can call the city too on your house right now and just say, hey, my address is 121 Banana Street, and say, just want to see what permits are done for the basement. And they'll tell you if there are or aren't any for free going forward. Last time I was told by the city, they're going to start charging to do that, which I think is ridiculous and really ticks me off, because it's just another thing that the city's doing to stick their hand out in your pocket and ask you to do something. Like, if it's that big of a deal and it's wasting so much of their time, then they should just put it out publicly and you can go out and search it just like you can a title.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're charging for it really drives me nuts, because the city's making enough money. Property taxes in Lethbridge are higher than most, so enough's enough. Like, just figure out a better system. It's 2023 already. Just put them online.
It seems a little ridiculous because it's a city that requires you to have the permits in the first place.
And
now they're going to charge you to figure out if you even have the permits to begin with.
10 out of 10 annoying. So right now, it doesn't cost you anything to look them up, but in the future, it might. So if you have the permits done, get them done. If you can't get them done, we can work around it, but it'd be a good idea to get them done. So let's move on.
Or at very least, if you're unsure, know if there are permits or not when you go to list your house, so that
we can disclose it properly. So next thing, I guess the phone number for that, literally call 311 and they'll get it, and if you're in Lethbridge. So tip number 3, let's move on from that one. Just getting annoyed with permits in the city. Tip number 3 is don't renovate. Don't do it.
Bum, bum, bum. This feels like a controversial opinion.
Don't renovate unless you talk to probably a real estate agent about it first. Because the worst thing that you can do is say, I'm going to put $20,000 in my house to renovate it before I sell, and it doesn't actually increase the value of your home enough to get your money out, or at least get your money out of, let alone make a profit. It depends what you're doing. Again, if, like, let's say you had an unfinished basement, sure, finish your basement. That'll definitely add on to the value of your home. But let's talk about how much you should be putting into your basement first, so you're not going over the top or doing any extravagant renovations that you won't get your money out of, or, doing all your countertops in quartz or granite, and your area doesn't call for that. Like, maybe you won't get your money out of it if you spend all that money. So it is a good idea to talk to an agent beforehand to say, hey, I'm planning on doing these renovations. Even, hey, like, if you're thinking I'm going to sell this house in 2 years, but there's some things we want to do before we sell, like, let me know then, and I can try to give you an estimate of what I think you're going to get out of it if you're going to do these renovations, to see if they're even worth it. Because obviously your home is your home and you want it to be a certain way, but it might make you think twice if you're not going to get your money. And maybe at the time you're going to say, you know what, I want quartz countertops all over my whole house, and I'm going to pull them out and put new ones in, and I'm not going to get my money out of it at the end of the day, but that's totally fine. It's what I want. But at least you know that, and you're not surprised by it. Well, I thought I would have got my money out of it if I did X, Y, Z. So it would be definitely a good thing to know, I think.
I saw a Facebook post. It was somebody asking the Lethbridge community their opinion. They were going to list their house. They knew that the carpet was getting a bit dated. They were worried about a seller coming in and thinking, oh, that carpet's garbage, we want to replace it. And they were asking if they are better off to replace their carpet, or if they're better off to acknowledge that it's an old carpet and essentially give them a discount in the price, already bearing that in mind.
I think what they were, if I remember, this was the same.
You saw the thing?
They were wanting to know if they should replace the carpet, or if they should just tell the buyers that they'll replace the carpet before possession, and the buyer can pick out the new carpet.
Oh, okay.
So they were like, I know the carpet's worn, and I want to get it done, but I don't want to, like, put my own opinion in what I think carpet's best, when the buyer could want to rip it out right away and put newer in. So why don't you pick? And I think it was on a real estate board too. I think I remember this one.
I thought it was just like on swap and buy. Well, somebody throwing it out.
If you had that question, then there was a realtor that asked the same one, like on the realtor Facebook page.
Okay.
So there's a whole bunch of realtors putting in their opinion, and the majority of the realtors out there, and I don't know what to think, if I agree with it or not.
Okay.
But the majority of the realtors' opinions were just get it replaced. because buyers have a harder time. They get it replaced with something neutral, obviously nothing too crazy, but do what you can to pick out the best carpet that you can, that you think will fit the best, because a lot of buyers will go in and they can't see past it. And they'll see the gross carpet and they'll be like, they just can't visualize what it's going to look like with new carpet.
Interesting.
When if it were me, and like I think both you and I are
I know exactly where my mind would go on this one.
We're pretty particular, and we would say, yeah, let us pick the carpet. Like, sweet, now I get to pick exactly what I want in this house.
Yeah.
When most people would just rather walk in and have it done.
Yeah.
Even though they're going to have the carpet done by the time they get in there.
Yeah.
They just can't visualize past it. So
it
was very interesting to hear all this.
I don't mean to be a high maintenance person, but I do feel.
But you are a high maintenance person?
No, come on, give me some credit. When it comes to my house, I've been very fortunate that I have gotten to set these spaces up exactly how I want them. And for me going into a house, I am the kind of person that can visualize what it would look like once I put my own touch on it. So if somebody spent a whole bunch of renovations, but they did everything in a color palette that I don't like and spent all this money repainting their house in a color palette that I don't like, that has absolutely no value to me whatsoever.
Yep.
But I also understand, like with this example in particular, how maybe there is somebody who can't visualize it and
they just see a gross carpet and that's all they can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
or because of the gross carpet, they devalue everything else in the house, even though the carpet will be replaced. Right. So again, another reason why you should reach out to somebody to get you a professional opinion before you pull the trigger on anything. So moving on from that, one thing that you do want to renovate is any half-finished projects. So let's say you are renovating a bathroom and you're halfway done and your trim's not up. Finish those little things, because it just helps you complete the look of your home and just gives it that more complete feel, rather than having 99% of the, or 90% of the house is great. Then there's these little things that take away from the house being 90% done. And again, lots of people can't see past that 10%. Even if it was like, yeah, this will be done by possession, there's some buyers that'll can't visualize it. Might sound ridiculous to you, but you might be one of those buyers, who knows, that just have a hard time seeing it. So I would recommend getting any half finished projects done for sure, especially before photos or listing videos or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So tip number 4 is prepare your schedule. The biggest thing to do is be prepared that you're going to have showings, and showings can be a pain in the butt. But again, prepare yourself ahead of time that there's going to be showings, and you're going to have to leave your house at the drop of a hat to get people in there, because the more showings you turn down, the less likely you are to sell the house quicker and for a better dollar. If it's very difficult for buyers to get in, it's common sense. Like if you go to buy a car and no one's looking at the car, no one's going to buy it. If you're selling a house and no one can see the house, no one's going to want to buy it. So just prepare your schedule, do what it takes. Maybe, I don't know, not cook at your house as much if that's going to be a problem. If you always got to clean up and make the houses clean, like just do those little things. Try not to mess up the house. It's like the worst time, because you can't use your house at all when you're doing it. But again, if you want your household, these are just the things you have to do. So I just want you to be prepared for that before you go into listing.
There are a few other things that you probably have to make arrangements for. If you have kids, unfortunately, or your dogs or your pets.
You could bring the dogs out for a walk while they're showing or whatever. Your dogs will probably love it. Your work schedule too.
Yes.
Like let's say you're working from home. You talk to your employer, do what you can to like work from a coffee shop or whatever as much as you can, because yeah, I understand you have to work, but you got to sell your house. So people need to see it. That's all there is to it.
It's an inconvenient time. There isn't a whole lot that I think you can do about that.
I know it doesn't happen often, but sometimes clients get annoyed when there's so many showings, but I'm like, this is a good thing. We're trying to sell it. Like I'm doing my job getting people through here. So it can be a pain. Just make sure that you're being as flexible as you can. Of course, if there's some times that just don't work for XYZ, again, just let the buyers know that ahead of time. But if you can say, my house is for sale and you can look at it whatever time you want, I'm going to get my butt out of there. That's ideal. More to that than just for showings, but be prepared to adjust your moving, your packing schedule, and be flexible with possession dates. In a seller's market, it's a little bit easier. You can basically do whatever you want and people are going to buy your house anyway. Sometimes for people, the price is just as important as the moving dates. So sometimes you never know. People will pay you an extra $10,000 to move your house, to leave your house early. Like if you're like, hey, I get my new house in 90 days. These people want it at 60. Well, I'm going to have to rent for the next month. So yeah, I'll move early, but you're gonna have to pay for my, give me the difference between what's gonna cost me to move ahead of time than it will now. As much as even if you are in a seller's market, I always like to tell sellers to be flexible, because again, even if these are the dates you want, maybe you're gonna get a better price, or if you can be flexible on those possession dates. Obviously there's other circumstances that it's not always possible, but just again, it's another tip, be as flexible as you can.
I can see how on either side that could help a negotiation.
So number 5 is picking an agent. And this is where I come in, actually. So this is where I can actually brag about all the things that I do for my listings. So today I'm going to talk about probably the 3 most important things that I think I do for listings. There's a whole bunch of extra stuff that I always do when I go into a listing presentation or a listing consultation or whatever, and I kind of explain all the marketing tactics that I do. But there's the top 3 that I think are most important. And if I were here to do the listing presentation, it'd be another 20 minutes on the podcast. And those are saved for only people who want to list with me. So if you want to learn more, just reach out and I'll bring the whole listing presentation. I can kind of show you and walk you through everything that I do. But the first and most important, that is like tried and true, is listing photos. So if you don't have good photos, your house is going to take longer to sell and you're going to get less money. That's just how it is. When the stat is 97% of people buy their home, start researching for their home online before they ever go and look at one. So there's currently 400 houses listed in Lethbridge on the market, roughly. So out of those, your house needs to stand out above the rest. And their first introduction to your house is going to be online through the listing photos. That's the very first thing they see. I don't know how many people, do you read the write-up when you're looking at houses? How often?
Like never.
Nope.
I have to be super invested in the house already in order for me to...
What gets you invested in the house?
The photos. 110%.
You really see a big difference from when you get really professional looking photos to when you get like cell phone garbage photos. There's a huge difference in between. But you need to have professional photos done to be able to put your home in the best light right away. And that's like, it's like the billboard to your house. Right? When people are swiping through, they'll see those good listing photos and then bam. With listing photos, we use a method called Flambient. I'm not going to go too in depth into it either, but basically it uses flash and ambient photos. So an ambient photo is literally if you just take your phone and take a picture, you're using all the ambient light to capture in the sensor. And then what we do is also fill in the other light with, if you look with your cell phone, it's like HDR2. So they actually can look pretty good if you know what you're doing. But if you take a camera, like just go get a camera and take a picture, you're going to see lots of like light and dark spots in your house. So what we do is fill in those dark spots with flash, and then we kind of blend them all together so that when you see a listing photo, everything should be evenly lit properly. So if you're looking down a long hallway, everything should be lit properly. You shouldn't have any dark spots in your photo. That's basically one of the ways you can tell if it's a professional photo. I know a lot of people sometimes can't tell the difference, but that's giveaway number 1. Giveaway number 2 is if your photos are crooked. Giveaway number 3 is if, well, there's a whole bunch of other ones, but whatever. You just need proper listing photos. Make sure they're professional. Should look like a magazine when you're flipping through. Number 2 is a 3D walkthrough. And I do these with all my listings as well. And the debate, I think, for me was out for a long time whether these are useful or not. But recently, I had a buyer from BC who needed to have main floor laundry. Didn't matter if it was a bungalow or a 2-story, anything like that, but she needed to have main floor laundry. And if you look at listing photos, we were having a really hard time telling in some of them where the laundry was.
It's not a key factor in a house. Like it's not the showiest thing. So I get why it could kind of be.
Most of the time it's like just a little bit of a bonus if it's on the main floor.
Yeah.
If it's in the basement, like 90% of people don't really care where the laundry is. But for this lady, she really wanted main floor laundry. And in the description, lots of people don't mention laundry in the description because there's lots of other things to talk about in the description. So the only way we could find it is if there was a 3D walkthrough and you could walk around and go through each room one by one and see where it is.
Yeah.
So it was helpful in that situation. But what I always think is very important is when somebody comes to the listing and they're like, oh, those look like really great photos. This is kind of what I'm looking for. Oh, I like this. I like that. And then then they want to keep snooping. So what's the next thing they do? Well, what else can I see? Is there more photos? Oh, there's a 3D walkthrough. And then they go through the walkthrough. Then they Like you can literally click through every spot in the house and investigate every single little room and get really nitpicky. And it's like more of a experience doing the 3D walkthrough because then you actually feel like you're walking through. So let's say you've gone through every room, you know where everything is. It gets you more feel for the layout. It provides a little bit more depth as to how big the space is and where everything is. And then the third thing that I always do is my listing videos. So if you're watching this on YouTube, obviously you've seen my listing videos.
Can we go back?
What?
I want to say something about the 3D walkthrough. Me, I'm obsessed with the 3D. I'm obsessed with the 3D walkthroughs. I actually really like them. Maybe I'm looking at a house and it has photos. Maybe the house that has the 3D walkthrough has got some of the exact same features as the one that doesn't have the 3D walkthrough, but I would have never seen that because it obviously doesn't have the 3D walkthrough. So I'm already more emotionally invested in these little things before I even show up to the showing.
Yep.
And maybe the other one will match it.
It gives you...
But maybe I already have it in my head because I've seen this and I've been reviewing and spending time on it.
Again, this leads into my third one, which is the listing videos. So again, if you're watching on YouTube, you've probably seen the listing videos. If you're just listening to the podcast, I highly recommend you go into the YouTube channel, Kurtis Hawkins Realtor, and checking out these listing videos. Because when you combine all three of them, the listing videos in themselves, there's a whole strategy behind them and what I do with them to basically gain an audience. And right now on the YouTube channel, there's close to 1,600 people that have subscribed that are literally waiting for the next YouTube tour to come out. Lots of these people are out of town, lots of people are in town, but they just want to see new listings and they want to see it in an entertaining way. So that's why I do these listing videos. And yes, they do actually help you sell your home, contrary to what another realtor might tell you. But so starting from the beginning, let's say, just picture yourself as a buyer. You're going through all these listings on Realtor.ca. Okay, you see this house, got some good photos. You're probably not looking for good photos right now, but, this house looks very warm and inviting. That's because there's good photos. So then you're doing a little bit more. You flick through the photos. This one might work. Then you look through the listing photos again. Oh, I'm starting to like this one. Okay, where's some more information? Then you might read the description. Oh, okay, now it's aligning a little bit more. Oh, what else can I dig on this site? And then you find, there's a 3D walkthrough. So then you spend 15 minutes doing this tedious little 3D walkthrough and inspecting everything. And then you're digging deep even more into the listing. And then you see the listing video. And then in the listing video, I can just go into way more detail and provide more of an emotional experience when you're watching this video, and I can talk about how there's 3 bedrooms on the main floor, which is really important for young families because they want to keep all of their young kids on the same floor. Yeah, you can put that in the description, but I can make a video as long as I want. You only have so many characters in the description, and no one's going to read a description that's too long anyway. But I can show you retention rates and how long people watch these videos and how detailed you can get and how much more emotion you can put into these videos. Now you've combined photos with a 3D walkthrough with the listing video. All of a sudden, they spent half an hour, 45 minutes invested in your property versus all the other ones that they just clicked through. So let's say there's 2 properties listed. One has photos, 3D walkthrough, listing video. Next one is your next door neighbor with the exact same house and they only have listing photos. They might really like that house next door, but they've only spent 5 minutes on their listing and they spent 20, 40, an hour on your listing. That's why I think it's really important. It really starts to compound. Now, within the listing video is great because it goes on Realtor.ca, but it also sits on YouTube where I have a whole nother strategy that I put into it that I'm not going to go into right now. Because if you want to know more, then I got to come to your kitchen table and explain my listing presentation.
It's your secret sauce. You can't just go giving it away.
It is. And it's pretty mind-blowing. And I'm not just saying that just to get a listing or anything, but it's pretty cool how it works. And the reason why I have so much experience with YouTube is because my wife and I, Chelsea, actually have another YouTube channel called Kurtis and Chelsea. And we've done lots of work with tourism organizations and big brands like Eureka Vacuums and other brands have reached out to us through this platform. And we've have 3 years experience growing a YouTube channel this way and have learned a lot about how the algorithm works and how search works on YouTube, et cetera, so that we can really leverage this in order to grow our brand and sell homes. Yeah.
This is how you actually got into real estate.
Yep.
Is that you started making content for realtors. you saw that there was a need in the market for better content, more entertaining content, more engaging content, all related to houses.
Yep.
And
the goal literally since then has been to bring some excitement back into just bring it to the Lethbridge real estate market, because it's all kind of the same. It's all kind of boring. It's list your house with a professional, put some photos up, and there's the listing, and that's it. And it's pretty dull and boring. So my goal has always been to bring some excitement back into it and bring HGTV quality listing videos back to the market, and just get people excited about buying and selling their homes again. I think that's it for this video. I hope those are 5 useful things that you probably didn't know when it comes to selling your home. Again, if you guys want me to go more in depth on more of the cosmetic things or the more
if you have any
accessible things, I guess, I don't know.
Not even more accessible things, but we did talk about RPRs and permits and things like that. Those are pretty complicated and convoluted things. So
and that's probably why you don't hear of a lot of them on any sort of media. Like, no one's going to make a blog article about a RPR because no one's searching that, because it's boring as hell.
Yes, but if you have any questions related to these, please reach out to Kurtis.
Yes, please do. If you guys like this podcast and you want to watch another one, then all you have to do is subscribe. This is a new podcast, so wherever you're listening to it, on any podcast platform, if you could give us a like or a review, that would be greatly appreciated, because we are a pretty new podcast. This is our 12th episode.
10th.
No, we just posted the 10th.
Oh, this will be our 12th episode. Amazing.
This will be our 10th episode.
That's so amazing.
So if you guys, again, don't want to miss another one, subscribe if you like it. Do all those things, like it, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.